Bet the Board presents Stay Green. Stay Green is your first stop for all the metrics, matchups, and money-making opportunities at the track each race week. This is Stay Green, the NASCAR betting podcast. Here are your hosts, Todd Fuhrman and racing analyst Chris Werme.
Welcome into the Stay Green podcast, part of the Bet the Board podcast network. It's all things NASCAR all the time on this very fine show, and some of the greatest words in racing we get to mutter this weekend. It's a cutoff race. I'm your host, Todd Fuhrman, joined as always by professional NASCAR bettor and my esteemed co-host on this magical mystery tour, Chris Werme. And Wormser, we've had two of the more unpredictable playoff races in Atlanta and Watkins Glen. We're headed to Bristol, where, of course, things are going to go exactly according to plan Saturday night under the bright lights, right?
I think I'm very excited to have Bristol be the cutoff race again. There's potential chaos. We have potential tire issues, and I'm just excited to see how the weekend unfolds. Qualifying is going to be exponentially important for those guys right on the playoff cut line. But I would say I give Watkins Glen, based on my expectation, more like a B-. I was hoping for an A+, but a B- overall when it comes to the racing at Watkins Glen.
It is tough to earn an A on Worm's modified bell curve that he utilizes to try and grade out race performances and tracks. For those folks who may be tuning into the Stay Green podcast for the first time, we break things up much like a NASCAR race. It's all about three stages. Stage one, a recap of Watkins Glen and how it may or may not have impacted the playoff picture. Stage two, we'll deep dive the Bristol race this weekend, Saturday nights, under the bright lights on the Tennessee-Virginia border. And stage three, like we've said, we'll do all postseason long, kind of hit the playoff reset button, some of the drivers to watch, what the updated odds may look like, and where, if there happens to be any sort of opportunity. So stage one, when we drop the green flag and we go racing, or did go racing at Watkins Glen, it's Chris Buescher passing Shane Van Gisbergen on the final lap to claim his first victory of the season. We've talked at great lengths about how Chris Buescher has been the model of consistency as far as road course racing is concerned, and finally is able to break through. Race gets shuffled up a little bit on a mid-race caution after it looked like Chastain and SVG were going to be racing out to a very comfortable lead. But as we know, NASCAR races have a knack for not being able to stay green in any capacity. Complete chaos, probably the best way to describe how the playoff drivers felt, as it seemed like everyone that had something to race for got collected in some kind of calamity and needed to scramble to try and accumulate points, Ryan Blaney being the lone exception. His race day was over, and I'm convinced he could have been back in Charlotte before the race actually ended. But a hat tip to Spire Motorsports, who finds a way to get three drivers inside the top 10 the first time in that esteemed organization's history. Incredible to see Carson Hocevar continue to come of age. So Watkins Glen, Wormser, how did you fare at the window? I know Denny Hamlin top 10 didn't quite get there the way we drew it up, but it wasn't much of a sweat for our listeners. Let's put it that way.
It's always fun when that's the last couple of weeks. I mean, we've lost some serious bets early on, whether it was lap 2 with our Blaney and Truex, and then to follow that up quickly with a Watkins Glen, 60% through the first lap, having Denny Hamlin accrue some damage, go multiple laps down. But that's just, that's the NASCAR variance tax that you're going to pay every now and then, is sometimes you just don't have to sweat bets because, it's over after a few laps. But, kind of grading out, I guess, my performance at this track. And the pre-race poll, my comments about Carson Hocevar, I said, it looks like he's going to be riding a bicycle around the track. I don't think he finishes even on the lead lap. So that was wrong.
Might have been a turbocharged bicycle, one with that fancy battery pack that he didn't have to do most of the pedaling himself like the Flintstones car.
The funny thing is, everyone was so nervous about him on the front row. Not one person, I saw no tweets. I saw no comments about what if Carson Hocevar wins the race. Although he was restarting on the front row of a road course race where you'd think you have a chance, everyone's like, well, it's not going to be him. It's going to be Buescher, or it's going to be the 16 with SVG.
I mean, they weren't wrong. I mean,
no, they weren't wrong.
Wasn't in the picture after that final late race restart.
Yeah, no chance. But that race, I think, kind of that sequence when during green flag stops, when SVG and Ross Chastain had about a 7.5 second lead on the field, a loose tire on pit road. And I thought NASCAR did the right thing, trying to withhold throwing the caution with that tire. Now there's going to be some racing purists that might say, hey, you throw the caution. A caution is a caution no matter what. Yeah, you kind of flip the race when that happens. However, you get Daniel Suarez not getting a tire completely tight, cracks the wheel, he loses it, goes off into the gravel pit, and completely stymies his teammate, who was leading the race at the time, by 7 seconds. And once that happened, you put those guys out on older tires. Then you stay green for a while. Chris Buescher then takes the lead. And one thing where I thought the broadcast really struggled was under those green flag pit stops where SVG and Chastain were on much older tires. They were running second and third behind a Buescher that had, I think, 17 or 18 lap fresher tires. They didn't show who won the race off, like the race off pit road. So it was you had the 1 and the 16 had already pitted, then the 17 pits, and then it took them like 8 or 9 minutes to say, hey, Chris Buescher has assumed the lead. And I thought that was the critical point in the race. I mean, that was the race for the win. At some point, Chastain somehow lost positions to SVG. They didn't cover that as well. So I know there were a lot of people that were very happy with the way the broadcast went, but I definitely struggled to understand what happened to Chastain. When did SVG pass Chastain? They never showed that, and they never showed the race for the win. In my opinion, yes, it was with 20 or 30 laps to go, but still, that's the race. That's what people want to see. And everyone was, I was receiving text saying, like, I'm not going to win.
Changes the dynamic of the race completely, and you're not quite sure how you've gotten to that point.
Yeah, it's just, Buescher has a 4-second lead. I'm like, a 4-second lead? He had a 2-second lead, and then 1 lap on older tires when those guys had fresher tires. I was shocked. I wasn't quite sure how he got there, but ultimately a great drive by the 17 team. A shame that they're kind of not in the playoffs, because I think that the way that they're running on all tracks, they would be a real threat. And it'll be interesting to see if his teammate and boss and driver of the 6 car can kind of make things happen this weekend at Bristol.
Overall, from a racing standpoint, I know we didn't do anything in head-to-head matchups, so I apologize to the Stay Green listeners. We talked about offering a best bet on the Bet the Board website, but when we're not actually putting skin in the game, we're not just going to put up a bet just for the sake of making a bet. But apparently you had an interesting live betting experience that you might like to share with some of the novices or recreational players out there to go, okay, I've done that before, and it's good to know that even the pros make that mistake.
Yeah. I remember you texted me on the restart, hey, who am I rooting for your live perspective? And I had some SVG. We had some SVG before the race started. So obviously him. And I said, I'm really big on McDowell. And you're like, big on McDowell. Okay.
Couldn't quite figure it out. Thought there was
wasn't
something
sure why that was the case.
Thought there was something going on that I was missing given the race that I had watched, but continue.
So I'm not going to lie. I meant to bet Buescher, and I bet McDowell live. And I do have a witness. This is not me just saying, oh, of course, but I had McDowell apparently big after making multiple bets on Michael McDowell when I meant to make them on Chris Buescher. So towards the end of the race, it was like there was zero chance that Buescher was not going to pass SVG. I mean, once that happened, I was like, it's going to be even more gruesome to watch. And as soon as the 17 made his way through the S's, force SVG into a mistake. But yep, I bet the wrong guy live twice. So that happened. Kind of
good work out of you. Good work out of you. So look, you can teach an old dog new tricks, and even some of the best in the business make some of those mistakes. So let that provide a little bit of solace for those folks who are betting NASCAR live for the first time. So we'll wave the green, white checkered flag on stage 1. I'll encourage you to follow Chris on social media at ChrisWerme15. I'm Todd Fuhrman. You can follow me there. All things Bet the Board podcast related. Be sure to follow the podcast at Bet the Board Pod, whether it's college football, the NFL, or of course your beloved NASCAR as the season continues to wind down. We mentioned at the top of the show, Worm, it is a cutoff race this weekend at Bristol. We've seen Atlanta, the super speedway racing there. We've seen the road course trials and tribulations at Watkins Glen. So what does NASCAR put on the schedule? A little more than a half-mile concrete oval, the last great Coliseum, Thunder Valley. So many nicknames with everything that we'll see there. 6 of the last 7 races here have been controlled by drivers starting towards the front of the field. So it places a premium on qualifying as well when the race weekend really starts. But I think the first and most important question I have to ask you before we get into some of the individual driver breakdowns, do you think we can go into this race on Saturday night with a similar expectation to what we saw in the spring, where it was all about tire wear? Those things were cording. Those things were shredding. Drivers couldn't push the tires to the limit. Or was that kind of a one-off and an anomaly that we shouldn't be basing any of our pre-week determinations on when it comes to starting to build out our race card?
I don't think that's what's going to happen in the race, but you should keep it in mind when making the bets at this point in the week. I'm not saying that it's for sure going to race one way or the other. I would say there's a 70 or 80, I would say 80% chance that it races much more like the night race from last year in 2023, which was also won by Denny Hamlin. But I don't anticipate after 30, 35 laps us having cording or tire failures. However, make sure that when you're making those bets that you keep that in mind as a possibility. So don't go anywhere. Don't go crazy, I would say, at this point in the week, unless you're sure that the driver was good in both scenarios. Again, last week we talked about trusting drivers with tire wear, but also on road courses. I think this week they have to be good at Bristol, and they have to have done well in the spring race in order for you to confidently bet at this point in the week.
I do wonder what the attendance will look like at the race on Saturday night. I can't imagine when they put this on the schedule, NASCAR wanted to go head-to-head with a Tennessee SEC opener on the road at Oklahoma, knowing that portion of the state typically bleeds vol orange.
Yeah.
So it creates for a unique dynamic. I have to imagine that will be one of the football games most heavily viewed in the RVs and, of course, in the tailgate. When we get into Tier 1 drivers, you mentioned drivers that have a good track record at Bristol and drivers that are good with tire wear. No better place to start than with the race favorite, Denny Hamlin. Widely available in that 4-1 range, upwards of 4.5-1. And you look at Denny, he hasn't been great to start the playoffs. Just one top 10 over his last 4 races. We have to go all the way back to race 11. And I know we sound like a broken record at Dover to find the last time that the 11 drove his car into victory lane. He does have back-to-back wins at Bristol, though, on his resume. 5 straight starts, all inside the top 7. He's led 305 laps during those last 2 wins here. And when you look at some of the next-gen stats, best average finish, understandably, second in total speed, second in driver rating, second in average running position. But Denny racing with a bit of pressure this weekend, knowing that he is on the outside looking in before we drop the green flag Saturday night.
Yeah, I think the first thing you want to look at would be where he's at in points. He is crazily 6 points outside this cutoff line. And do I think that they're feeling a little bit of pressure in the 11th camp? Yes. However, you have to be very confident if you're Denny Hamlin, Chris Gabehart, and this entire FedEx organization. He's been phenomenal here. He's won the last 2 races, which ended up being very different races. He kind of fits the mold of, okay, if we're just going to run a regular Bristol race, yep, he's been good there. And if we're going to have this high tire wear cording potential, obviously Denny Hamlin has to be ranked number 1. However, he's priced that way. Where I get a little flinchy to bet Denny Hamlin at this point in the week is he might not need to win the race. And I know that that's not built into his character, but you got to tell me if there's 40 or 50 to go and he kind of settles in 4th or 5th place and he's safely within the cutoff, I don't think that he's going to be pushing it to go try and win the race, where you do have some other guys that are in must-win scenarios that might push it more. I'm not saying that, and the must-win is never a thing when it comes to betting, but with NASCAR, you can get a little aggressive or you can kind of settle in and just kind of take a finish. So they have Denny Hamlin priced like he's going to qualify really well, and that's just automatically baked in. I don't know that that's a guarantee. You still got to go out there and run a very fast lap on a difficult racetrack. I would say wait on Denny Hamlin, because even if he qualifies top 3, I can't imagine him going off any shorter than 4-1 at this point.
When we talk about Toyotas and how well they could potentially run this weekend, we should go from Denny Hamlin, stay in the JGR camp, and look at Christopher Bell, whose odds widely available right around 6-1. And as far as the 20 car is concerned, 5 top 6 finishes over his last 7 races, did come home 14th at Watkins Glen, ending a streak of 3 straight top 4s. When we look at Bell, he owns 10 top 5s this season, and to go along with, 16 top 10s. And as far as Bristol is concerned, 3 straight top 10s. He's led 29 plus laps in 3 straight starts here. Started 12th here in the spring. It was actually his worst starting position since 2020. And as far as his next gen stats are concerned, average finish wise, 4th best, but the best total speed ranking, best driver rating, best average running position. There is no doubt that the 20 expectations are he will be stout this weekend, racing without the weight of the world on his shoulders as it pertains to getting through to the round of 12.
Yeah, absolutely. This is no shock to see Chris Bell up there in the favorites. Where I think it's going to be very important for him is qualifying. Typically Chris Bell at this track, whenever he's leading laps, it's not like he's driving through the field. This is more of putting together a solid weekend. So I think in order for this price at 6-1 on Chris Bell to have any value, you need to make sure that he's going to qualify well. Now, if you look at last year, this race, he was able to put it on the pole and lead a bunch of laps. However, there were some other guys that drove through the field and were able to pass Chris Bell. One of those was Denny Hamlin, and then the other driver was Kyle Larson. And for all of those guys to be kind of priced the same, I think that Chris Bell might be the most overvalued of those 3 drivers. I think that the guy that should actually be the favorite for the race would be Kyle Larson.
And you mentioned Kyle Larson. He's priced in a very similar price point as Christopher Bell, 6-1-ish, we'll call it. We look at the 5. Look, over the last 5 races, average finish 21.6. 4 of his last 5 races, he's finished 12th or worse. And there actually is a little bit of pressure on Kyle Larson this weekend. When it comes to Bristol, he should be brimming with confidence, much like Denny Hamlin, where he has 5 straight finishes of 6th or better. Just 1 finish outside the top 10 in his last 10 trips here. Led laps at Bristol in 5 straight races, started the last 2 races here 10th or worse. So to your point, he's shown an ability to drive through the field, even with a poor qualifying record. And as far as his next-gen stats, 2nd best average finish, 3rd best total speed ranking, 3rd best driver rating, and 3rd best average running position. So the 5 expected to be good when we unload on Friday.
Yeah, there will be some points concern. He's 26 to the good. I can't imagine, having such a poor start to the weekend where, maybe he only picks up a couple points in stage 1. I think that if he can pick up some stage points, they're pretty much going to be locked in or all but locked in. And I think he can go and race for the lead. I think one thing to note that last year he did start last or 36. I'm not sure how many drivers were in the race, but it did not take him long to work his way back up through the field. The same goes for Denny Hamlin. Larson, I think both of them had penalties the first pit stop. So Denny Hamlin and Kyle Larson both ended up going to the rear, and I think Kyle Larson made it up to 9th to get stage points. So both Denny and Kyle Larson are able to work their way through the field. I don't know that I can say the same for Chris Bell at this point in the week. So that's why I lean towards Larson if you're going to be taking one of these favorites, because I do think that Denny might be a little bit more cautious when it comes to racing late if he can just kind of finish out the race. But Kyle Larson, I feel like he's going to lock himself in or get very close to and can go for that race win. So of the 3 favorites, I do like Larson the most. I might have a little bias there. I do think that this is one of his best tracks. You have to be good on both the top and the bottom. And I think Larson does such a great job of getting off the corners here. He's able to make pass and carry speed, even on the low line, to make passes because you're going to have to do that. You're going to have to be good on both the top and bottom in order to make passes. This is where lap traffic's been an issue. And I think Kyle Larson does the best job of kind of dicing through there. And that's why I think he should probably be the favorite, or if you're looking to play a favorite, I would play him. I cannot see him under any circumstances going off at 7 or 8-1. Even when he started last year, I think he went off as the favorite, or maybe the second favorite.
His number didn't drift after a strong practice session, even starting at the back of the
field. He spun in qualifying, and that was pretty much it. So anyone that likes Kyle Larson at this 6-1 price at Bristol, I don't hate that at all. And to the point, I did not bring up Chris Bell's point situation. That's important when talking about a win price. He's 46 to the good.
He can race for the win.
What's that?
I mean, he's gonna go out there and he'll race for the win.
So I like Chris Bell from that perspective in the same way that I like Larson. I anticipate them both picking up stage points and not having to worry about that cut line very much. The variance of catching a wreck is not going to change much for Kyle Larson, whether he's 46 to the good or 35 to the good in that final stage. So, that's why I like that Larson price the most of the favorites.
When we look at some of the other drivers, and we've seen a price on this guy all over the place, as low as 8-1, upwards of 11-1 is Brad K. And you talk about having a little bit of wiggle room or being points to the good. That is not a luxury that the six car is afforded. And when we look at his current form, 3 straight finishes, overall 14th or worse. The last time he ended up on the podium came 14 races ago at Gateway. As far as looking at Bristol, he started 10th or worse in 3 of the last 4 trips here. We know qualifying has kind of been the bane of his existence. Just 1 finish better than 6th in his last 5 Bristol races. Now, if tire wear is a thing, the 6 will be relevant. But other than that, I mean, you look at some of the underlying numbers, he's good but hasn't been great. I'm not sure how anybody's really advocating to put Brad on their dance card before they see if he's got speed in a 6 car this weekend.
Well, when has he qualified well last? He kind of starts behind the 8 ball when they unload, and then it typically doesn't qualify that well. And this is all going to be about market entry with Brad K. I don't like 8 to 11-1, especially when this guy, you could see him drift out if he slips up in qualifying, or maybe they just don't unload quite as well. This is a little bit of an overvalue for me. This is anticipating just a fast race car for Brad, especially when it looks like these big names, the Bells, Larsons, and Hamlin, have dominated within the last few Bristol races. So I understand why books are maybe hesitant to lay a number in this 14 or 15-1 range, but that's kind of what he deserves. I think he's a little overvalued. I trust him in matchups, but he also could find himself in a much must-win situation. What that means is they might stay out when the field pits or just do the opposite, or they could give up track position. Let's say he's running 4th or 5th and needs a win. They might have to go down and take tires with 30 to go just to do something other than the leaders. So I don't like this spot for Brad at that current price. However, we'll see what happens in practice. I just don't see him going off at shorter than 8-1. So I think that the best bet would be to wait. Even if he pulls it, I don't think you can make,
No, he's not going off as the favorite, in my opinion.
I don't think he's ever going off in the favorite. So I would say wait and see what happens after practice and qualifying.
From tier 1 to tier 2, we look at Ty Gibbs, and we saw some books open his number upwards of 20-1.
Yeah.
That, of course, didn't last all that long. So we'll more or less call 12 his consensus throughout the industry. And when we look at Ty Gibbs, 3 straight finishes, 17th or worse, still seeking that first win to go along with 5 podium finishes this season. As far as Bristol, not an extensive track history by any stretch of the imagination, but he did win both stages in the spring and led 137 laps. Finished 5th here last fall and led 102 laps in the process. It seems like if you're driving for Joe Gibbs Racing and you're coming out of the Toyota camp, you're going to feel right at home on that .53 concrete oval in Bristol.
Yeah, I certainly think that Gibbs opened up maybe a little high, and then I think that the correction is just book saying, okay, we have enough liability here. We are going to crash this price so that way we don't get absolutely killed. I think that, the 8-12 to 1 price is probably still a little short. I do think that there was value in that that 18-1, but also I thought that Ty Gibbs was a little bit more competitive at this point in the season earlier this year. So the tracks when we were running around Bristol, the Phoenix, Austin, Richmond, some of those tracks, he was running much better and more competitively than he is now. So I do think that there is a technique to Bristol. I do think that Ty Gibbs has kind of figured that out. So I think that the market just kind of maybe overcorrected a little bit. I think kind of 12-1 is a fair market value for what I think or what I expect from Ty Gibbs. Can he go out there and win? Absolutely. But he's also another guy that, he's 6 points to the good. He's going to go try to collect some stage points. And just like Denny Hamlin, if he finds himself running 4th or 5th with 80 laps to go, and he's locked into the playoffs with the way things run, I think that they're going to be really conservative and try to just move on to the next round of the playoffs. So I'd rather see him unload. I don't see a world where I play Ty Gibbs under any circumstances at like a 10-1 or 8-1 price this week at Bristol. So those of you that grabbed him at the 20-1 or 18-1 price, well done. You beat the market. Hopefully he can unload fast and qualify well for you. Otherwise, you might see some other market entry points in that 16 or 17-1 if he does start a little deeper in the field.
As far as some of the other Tier 2 drivers are concerned, Martin Truex Jr., Ryan Blaney, Chris Buescher, depending on where you look, prices as low as 11-1, prices upwards of 16. I mean, Martin Truex Jr., what can go wrong this season has gone wrong for the 19 team. Yeah. His average finish is 29th over the last 7 races, not exactly a ringing endorsement, as he picks up the rear 1 spot ahead of Harrison Burton in the standings. Bristol, second in the spring, but other than that, just 1 top 10 going all the way back to 2017. So it's not like it's a track that he's brimming with confidence when he rolls into. Ryan Blaney, meanwhile, was none too thrilled with NASCAR's rule that kept him from getting back in the race at Watkins Glen, given the damaged vehicle, whether it was his fault or not. Just 1 top 10 over his last 6 races. And we talk about Bristol, last 3 trips here, 16th or worse in that trio of races. And then, of course, there's last week's winner in Chris Buescher, who has raced exceptionally well at Bristol with 3 straight finishes of 7th or better here. He led at least 1 lap in all 3 of those races. And from his underlying metric standpoint, top 5 across the board in a lot of the speed things that you'd like to see. Chris Buescher, Martin Truex Jr., Ryan Blaney, Wormser. What can you make of that particular trio?
I'll start with Buescher. Obviously, not a points issue. This guy's going for wins, and he can be aggressive when other guys might not be as aggressive. I think that's a huge plus and advantage for Chris Buescher. Again, his issue has been where he qualifies. And if he doesn't get that caution, that untimely caution last week, I think it's a completely different ballgame. Was he good? Absolutely. But he did need a little bit of luck. And if he continues to qualify poorly, I still think you're going to find a better price on Buescher later in the week. This might be a little bit of an overcorrection, in my opinion. Now, can Chris Buescher win this race? Yes, we've seen him do it in the past. I think he did it, 2021? Yes, but that price was 60-1, not 12-1. So I think right now you kind of wait on Chris Buescher, wait for him to slip up in qualifying and go ahead and pounce at a higher number. Ryan Blaney, we have seen qualify well. He was on the pole here in the spring, I believe, at least started on the front row, led some laps. However, in the spring, whenever you're going to have tires that cord, Ryan Blaney's one of the lower guys on the list of guys you want to back. Now, if it's a normal track or like I anticipate it'll be something like last year, and he can end up with a good qualifying, I do think that this price, kind of the high teens, is not bad for Ryan Blaney. He's got a lot of speed. He has 29 points to the good, so I can't imagine he's just going to be satisfied if he has a race-winning car to go up there and move on. So I don't hate Ryan Blaney because he's shown this year that he can qualify well at this track. And I think if he qualifies well, maybe starts in the first 2 rows, you might be beating the market at this point. Truex, I'm done with Truex. I've been backing him.
We got a good number last week. Took a little 25-1. Watch him go off at 5-1 at Watkins Glen. But the CLV did not get us.
Yeah, it doesn't matter. I think CLV is so funny. All it does is just break your heart a little more when they don't win. You know, it's like, but we beat the market, and it's like, but he didn't win. So I don't know. Like CLV just gives you an opportunity to hedge your bet a little more or add something else to your card. Now, do I enjoy doing it? Yes, but we've been doing this long enough to know that it does not matter. We've had more success with the best bets when the market goes against us. You know, we almost win every one of those. Whenever we beat the market by 60, 70 cents, we tend to lose, and we lose early. You don't even have to sweat it. Whenever we beat the market, or whenever we beat the market, that loses. Whenever we, we've lost big to the market. I mean, like a couple dollars, and that just wins easily. So, Truex, gosh, I would have given anything to have this guy at a 16 or 17-1 price 4 years ago, but that's just not the case anymore. Even if he looks good, I don't anticipate him winning. I don't know what it is about the 19 team right now that they're like the Ricky Fowler of like majors. You just never, like, he could be there and he looks good, but probably not going to get it done.
As far as the rest of HMS, we talked about one driver in Kyle Larson, and in that tier 2, it's William Byron and Chase Elliott. Chase has been consistent here, hasn't shown a ton in the way of race winning speed. And William Byron, I mean, doesn't command a ton of respect for the way he's currently priced after finishing 35th in the spring. But before that, 3 straight top 10s. Either of these guys at all interesting to you, widely available in the high teens?
Yeah, I don't hate these guys. But William Byron is finally for the first time having to look a little bit, I think, over his shoulder and saying, hey, I'm only 25 points to the good after the season that I've had. And I think Byron's good here. He's not great here. I anticipate just a really strong run out of both teams. That includes Chase Elliott. Now, I think that Chase Elliott's just a little bit better on concrete in general. So I do think that I would give a slight edge to Chase Elliott, but we haven't seen Chase Elliott go out there and pass a bunch of race cars and win a race. He has 30 points to the good, so I don't think that that's going to be much of an issue. But we haven't seen that speed out of him that we've seen in the past. So although we could have a little bit of value playing him at this point in the week, but I think you still wait, check him out in qualifying. I don't think that either one of those guys have blown the doors off in practice and qualifying recently. We saw a little bit with Byron earlier in the year, so I'm going to go ahead and wait on both of them as well. I'm waiting on everybody. I have not played one outright at this point.
When we look at the final driver that I would call tier 2 would be Tyler Reddick. If you want to touch on him real quick, or we can zip right on to tier 3 with a couple of playoff drivers and some non-playoff competitors looking to try and spoil the party.
Yeah, I do want to talk about Reddick because I thought in practice the last 2 years he has looked arguably the best. And I went back and watched the pre-race poll for both races, and I thought he was going to be phenomenal. And because Larson's good here in the way they can kind of dime in the corner, I do think that there's a little bit of kind of that dirt track success. We've seen it. Ricky Stenhouse have success here. Obviously, Larson's had success here. You would think that this would be a track where Reddick does have some success. The one thing that he's done this year that's been better than years past, he's put together complete races. He's getting finishes. He's putting himself in position. So if you're going to take a Tyler Reddick, you're not going to see him be this high, have this high of odds from here on out on the rest of the playoffs. I just don't see it. Maybe I don't think you'll see odds like this for him for the rest of the season. So if you do like Tyler Reddick, you can steal some value here. At this outright price, what are we seeing? Like 20-1 on him right now? I saw it higher than that or earlier at some point. So I don't hate Tyler Reddick. Not only are you getting someone that's a good dirt track racer or that style of racing, but you're getting someone that's putting together complete races, or at least they have been up until, the last couple of weeks. I do think that this 45 team does present a little bit of value at this point in the week from an outright perspective.
Tier 3 guys, Kyle Busch, Ross Chastain, Josh Berry, Joey Logano, Michael McDowell. Any of those guys at all mildly intriguing for you when you try and figure out who could potentially be a surprise at Bristol?
Well, you want to say Kyle Busch would be a surprise because I think the entire betting world would be on him if he looks strong in practice. I mean, I think that'll be the dog that has fleas if he looks good in practice, because there will be every single sharp in the world, I feel like, would love him at kind of this 20-1 price. But I don't know. I don't necessarily see it. Same with Chastain. I can't get behind him on an oval. I know unless they turned a corner last week, but I think that was just the road course setup. Josh Berry is a guy that if there is tire wear, he can work his way up through the field. I thought he was rather impressive in the race in the spring here. But he's a tough one. And I think that the books are onto him a little bit. This 30-1 price on Berry is not the same as like the 80 or 90-1s we were seeing on him earlier in the year. Logano, I think the one thing Logano has going for him is, he's in. He's already through to the next round. So they can be really aggressive with strategy.
He just hasn't run well here.
He just hasn't run well. And gosh, he was fighting for his life last year at this cutoff race, and he went a lap down fighting for his life. So if Logano is, in my opinion, one of the hardest guys to handicap in this sport because, if he gets out front, he's going to be hard to pass. But he could also be a guy that's going a lap down. I never know with him. Whereas with some of these other drivers, you can kind of predict a little bit better how well they're going to run. But Logano is such a good driver that he can take an average car from practice, get some track position, and then hang on to it. I think him and Brad Keselowski do that better than anyone. And then when it comes to Michael McDowell, I mean, this guy's been sneaky good here. This is a road course racers. You're on the brake a lot. So I do think that, the AJ Allmendingers have been good here. Michael McDowell has been good here. And the thing about McDowell is he was good here in the spring and last year in the fall. So he kind of covers both of those, kind of criteria for playing something early in the week.
You mentioned Chastain, and maybe he's figuring it out. Ross Chastain, 5 top 5s so far this season. 3 of those 5 top 5s have all come in the last 6 races. So maybe things are starting to turn a little bit for the one car. The common denominator there is tire wear. Richmond 5th, Darlington 5th, Watkins Glen 4th, if we want to count the tire wear or lack thereof that we saw last weekend. So something to consider when we look at Team Trackhouse. Waving the green-white checkered flag on stage 2. Follow Chris on Twitter at Chris Werme 15. I'm Todd Fuhrman. You can follow me there. Most importantly, for all things Bet the Board, follow the podcast at Bet the Board Pod. And as we go into the home stretch, we're in playoff reset. The 4 drivers on the wrong side of the cut line: Harrison Burton, 20 points back in 16th. Martin Truex Jr., 14 points back in 15th. It's Brad Keselowski, 12 points back in 14th. And Denny Hamlin, 6 points back in 13th. All 4 of those guys have a little work to do, but you wouldn't know that by the way they're being priced in the big picture market. Denny Hamlin's still 11-2 to try and win the whole damn thing. Kess's number's a little bit longer, upwards of 40-1. I've seen Martin Truex as high as 50, and I don't think anybody, no disrespect meant, was betting Harrison Burton to be the Cinderella story and win the damn thing. So interesting dynamic in play. Fortunately for us, the little bit of exposure we have to Trace Briscoe, he's back on the right side of the cut line, and his number has been halved from 300-1 down to 150-1 compared to the 200-1 that we have from before the playoffs started.
Yeah, it's crazy that we're in this situation. I remember asking you a question. We're actually going to pull up this clip. I asked Todd a question earlier at the Atlanta, right before the Atlanta race, his prediction on the top 8 drivers. We'll play that clip right here. So Keselowski, Chase, Hamlin, Blaney, Byron, Reddick, Bell, Larson. Are all of those guys through, or is there someone that if they have a bad race, you could see them struggling?
So if you gave me a price on him to miss, knowing how snake-bitten he's been since April, I would take a flyer on Denny Hamlin being on the outside looking in.
Yeah, I could see that. And
he would be the guy that if I was looking at an aggressive number there, if there were yes-nos that were offered amongst those top 8.
Yep. So I think you did a great job. I think had you actually seen a price on Hamlin not moving on, and I know there's some books that maybe did have those prices available. We don't have access to all of those.
Did you actually see a book that had prices for drivers not to move on? I feel like some books offer yeses for everybody to move on, but I have never seen a yes-no for each round of the playoffs. It's a market that I honestly would love to see books get a little bit more aggressive in hanging to try and create a more extensive and expansive NASCAR betting menu during the postseason.
Yeah, I want to say I saw a tweet. I'm going to try to pull it up here, but this makes for great podcasting. So I'll try to pull it up. But ultimately, man, these guys are, it's crazy to see Denny Hamlin, Brad Keselowski, and Martin Truex Jr. on the outside looking in. Obviously some bad luck. However, if you look at who finished top 3 here in the spring, it was Denny Hamlin, Brad Keselowski, and Martin Truex Jr. So if there's a little bit of attrition, then I certainly think that those guys could work their way in. I mean, without question, they're already pricing Denny Hamlin like he's already moved on. So now is not the time to bet Denny Hamlin. But gosh, if I had to pick the guys that are not going to make it in, obviously Harrison Burton's not going to make it in. I'm going to go ahead.
Bold claim, Worm. Bold claim.
Yep. Yeah, I'll just leave it at that. Harrison Burton's out. Harrison Burton obviously out. And I don't think Truex makes it through. There's nothing to me it's almost like they got no gumption. They got nothing. Like Truex starts to fall off.
He just seems beaten down and defeated at this point, honestly.
his interview, I've never seen such a low energy interview in my entire life before last week's race. Hey, Martin, hey, great qualifying. What do you expect today? Well, yeah, we qualified pretty well. Lots of fall off. You will see. Like, whoa, okay, all right, Marty. You already enjoying retirement, or what's going on? So I don't anticipate a good Rex or good run out of Truex. I do anticipate both Denny Hamlin and Brad Keselowski getting in. It's just a matter of who do you think is going to fall out? Is there going to be someone that is 20 plus points to the good that has issues early? Probably not. I think that you'd have to look at Chase Briscoe and Ty Gibbs as the other guys that are probably going to fall out. But this has been a good track for Gibbs. And also I trust Chase Briscoe for whatever reason to figure it out and get it done. He's been phenomenal when he's been on the cut line. And I just don't know that he's going to make a mistake that cost him this. I think that someone can get caught up early. And at what point in the race are they caught up? Are there still 38 cars in the race, or are there 32 cars in the race? Because that factors into the calculus. The fact that drivers are talking about, hey, we heard this on William Byron's radio in the race when he was completely wrecked. I mean, I don't know how he was making the speed clock, that's for sure. But they were just saying the goal is to limp around and hope other guys wreck out.
Yeah,
like
that's all they're
actually factoring
in
into the calculus here, because William Byron, who's been stellar all season and model of consistency, is only 25 points to the good, which can evaporate like that at Bristol, because all it takes at Bristol is for a guy to slide back up the track. These wrecks at Bristol are terminal. This is not like Watkins Glen, where you can be Denny Hamlin and you can absolutely pound the wall and still figure out a way to finish mid-20s. That just will not happen at Bristol. You will not be able to make the minimum speed with the aero damage that you would have. So,
well, you also end up 30 laps down in the blink of an eye with how quickly we turn laps at Bristol at race
any
pace
mistake,
at 18, 19 seconds.
If we see green flag pit stops and you speed on pit road, your night's over.
Yeah, you're buried.
You're 4 laps down. I mean, it's over. So you cannot make a mistake, and you also can't just get caught up in something. Last year, that's what happened with Joey Logano. Yes, he was still probably on the outside looking in. However, yeah, man, this is just a tough track. I applaud NASCAR for throwing this in there as a cutoff race. But if I had to pick odds on guys that I think you're kind of the best bet sitting out there, man, Byron at 9-1 is kind of a healthy price for someone that's, yeah, he's disappeared a little bit, but that's still a Hendrick Motorsports car.
That number's not going away though. I mean, I mean, we're going into the next round. That number's not going away at 9-1. It's still going to be there heading into the next playoff race, I would think.
Yeah, you're right. I think that price is still baked in as, like he's moving on, right? That's just not the we're seeing guys like Chase Briscoe be priced like he's not moving on. I still think that Suarez at 100-1 is not a great bet. I like Briscoe still more at this 150-1. Cindric has just done a great job of accruing points.
Yeah, he's done an outstanding
70-1. You're throwing money away. You're
extremely comfortable for Cindric getting through, but yeah, I'm not running to bet him any more than I am Daniel Suarez at 100-1 or even higher to try and make a deep, legitimate threat to winning a NASCAR championship.
Yeah, I don't see that happening at all. So interesting. I still think that the best bet on the board is still kind of that Briscoe price. I don't like the spot that Ty Gibbs is in. I know we just haven't seen him. You're going to have to go out there and have enough speed to win races. At least Briscoe's done that. Briscoe's shown us that with a chance to win, with everything on the line, you can go out there and win a race, and he's done it multiple times. So, or at least get the finish you need in order to move on. And I still think that that's the best number out there if you don't have any of that 200. This is not an endorsement or a pick, but I just wanted to say that the best bet on the board, in my opinion, is that 150-1 on Chase Briscoe.
And that, my friend, is how we wave the checkered flag and put a bow on our Bristol preview for the Bass Pro Shops night race from Bristol Motor Speedway. But before we officially close up shop, one final thing to get done, and that's, of course, identifying a best bet opportunity for our loyal listeners to build their race card before we see cars on track this weekend.
Yeah, we are going to stick with something that you texted me earlier today, and you said that, this guy top 10 is a juicy price. Michael McDowell has been fantastic here recently. He's tended to qualify well, and again, not in the playoffs, so I think he's going to race aggressively, and I think that that's important at this track. He's been sneaky good. This is also a track where road course racers tend to have a little bit of success. So I like Michael McDowell. I see some 4-1s out there, but I like that all the way good down to plus 350 for Michael McDowell top 10. So just got to get a top 10. And we're hoping that you can at least watch more than 10 laps of this race before you rip up the ticket. That's the goal. But
we used a little bit of our good fortune earlier this summer with some best bets that may not have been perfectly handicapped that got home for us, and the NASCAR gods and the gambling gods decided to collaborate and conspire to rip some of those betting opportunities away from us early in races to avoid some of that heartbreak. And given the Saturday night start time, we will have a best bet, at least one matchup. We'll make sure something's on the site this week. Pre-race poll for you in terms of when you plan to launch.
It is going to be late today. Or late this weekend. I have I think it's called like a prenatal class. Like, do I go like listen
like
to
prenatal CPR and all that stuff?
I don't know. Yeah, they're going to teach us how to be parents. Apparently, I still have to leave early.
Good luck. Good luck to you.
Yeah, this is one of those things where I go to the class and then I'm the asshole that like halfway through the class.
You're the deadbeat.
I'm the deadbeat dad.
Like,
he's walking out in the class. He's going to walk out on his child, I'm sure. Like, I can't wait to see all the looks.
They didn't offer this on like a Thursday or Friday or any other day of the week. It had to be a Saturday for the one Saturday night race that we get in the playoffs.
Yeah, the one Saturday night. So the pre-race poll will be at 7 p.m. Eastern and 4 p.m. Pacific. That will be a half an hour before the race. It will be quick.
Ooh, you're cutting it close,
we will be firing quickly. So
you are cutting it close, buddy.
I know. Playing with fire, but Jenna's like, well, how long are you planning on staying around? I'm like, well, I should do the pre-race poll at like 2 our time. And she's like, oh, so you're going to be there for like an hour and a half?
Maybe you should just do the pre-race poll when you guys have a break during some of these parenting lessons you're taking.
Yeah, that's not going to happen. So I am going to come home. And, but yeah, it'll be a half an hour before the race. So make note on your calendars. I will actually probably post this slight time adjustment on Twitter here shortly. But I certainly like Michael McDowell. I thought he was solid here in the spring. Came in 11th and finished in the top 10 last year. And his average running position is really strong. And I tend to look at that a little bit more. So, yeah, Michael McDowell, top 10. I love it.
Let's do it. McDriver, he owes you a few bucks since you quadruple bet him last week, and he didn't have a chance to win the race. So maybe this is where you can start to get even on the 34 car. Want to wish all of the guys and girls that have tuned in to yet another episode of the Stay Green podcast the best of luck with all of your NASCAR investments this weekend. Tremendous festivities, one of the more exciting tracks to watch in the playoffs. Remember, Saturday night, a little bit of an unusual time. So if you're watching your college football, make sure you carve out some space for NASCAR as well. And most importantly, with a Michael McDowell top 10 ticket in that old portfolio, come Saturday night, we'll see you at the window.